Tonight we're going to start Access. Access is one of the programs in Microsoft Office that most people have no experience with. But it is one of the most powerful tools out there, probably second to Excel. Excel, an old buddy of mine used to call it the Swiss Army knife of computer programs because you can do just about anything with it. I've had people write term papers in Excel. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Some people try to simulate databases in Excel. We did a little bit of that. What Access is supposed to do is store data. And we have all kinds of data. You all have electric bills at home. You all have family trees that you got to worry about, car maintenance records, patient records. For me, databases of students and attendance, that attendance program that I use is all behind it is a foundation of a database. It keeps track of which students are in which class. It keeps track of which students attended on any given day. It even is smart enough to figure out that if it's Monday and it's right around 6 o'clock, you must be in the Microsoft Office class. It's all database driven. There's a database behind it. Without a database, I couldn't do that. And so Access is the tool that you're going to learn to use to build databases. And so we got some concepts that we got to get out of the way first. Databases are made up of tables. Lots and lots, potentially lots and lots of tables. Again, back to my attendance tracker, there is a table that keeps track of student information. One table is supposed to maintain the information for one object. So I have a table for students. I also have a table for courses, or sections of courses. More accurately, I have a table of sections. I have an attendance table. Each of those is related. Those tables, they store different pieces of information, but they're related. Here's an attendance record for Carrie Jo. What class was that? Microsoft Office. What day was that? Whatever day it is, November 3rd. All right. So it's got Carrie Jo, it's got the section, it's got the date. So it's got attendance, it's got the class. All of these can be tied together. So a database, first and foremost, is created of a number of tables. Initially, we'll have 2, sometimes 3. If you ever get into the intermediate class, we're getting up into 10. And the good news is those tables, as I said before, are all related, and you're going to learn how to tie them together. Databases store data in tables, but the real power is the ability to pull that data back out again. If next week, the counselor asks me, was Kate there yesterday on Monday? I won't remember. Those of you who have me for programming class know how long my memory lasts. I won't remember, but I can go back to my alternate memory and say, let me look it up real quick. And as long as I enter the data properly, it should tell me the truth, whether Kate was there or not. So databases are made up of a bunch of tables. Here's an example of a table that holds information about a patient. Each table is comprised of a bunch of fields. These fields are what make up what's called the table's structure. Every table has a different structure. In this database, whoever designed it, they need some kind of an ID number for a patient. Why do we need ID numbers? Because we could have 2 patients named Edward Darcy, and then how do we tell them apart? We can have 2 students named Lee Yang, and how do we tell them apart? They have different student ID numbers at Midstate. So often those ID numbers will be part of the process. Every patient gets an ID number, they have a first name, they have a last name, and they have a phone number. That's it. For this table, for this database, that's the only information that we want. If you're looking for the page I'm on for. It's the only information we want. Now, my students in my programming class are getting real hung up on real world. Well, in the real world, wouldn't I want their middle initial and maybe whether they're a junior or the third and their street address? Yeah. But if we make these real world, they get real big, real fast. So for this example, that's all we're storing about our patients. the number of fields and the names of those fields comprise the structure of each table. So each table has a different structure. My student table has your first name, your last name, your student ID number. That's probably about it because I don't keep your phone numbers because I'm not calling you. My class table has the class time that it starts. It has the class name, has the days of the week that it meets so that my program can be smart enough to say, it's Monday, 6 o'clock, Microsoft Office. Then there's a registration table. Brianna's registered in Microsoft Office. Jim's registered in Microsoft Office. You're all registered in Microsoft Office, and I keep track of that stuff. So there's a lot of different fields and different tables, and designing databases is a course all its own. I teach a 2-credit relational database development course that is nothing but designing databases to be as powerful and flexible as we can make them. How do we know which fields to put into what tables and how to divide it up into tables? That's an art. It's beyond the scope of this class. In this class, you'll be told we're having a database with these 2 tables or these 3 tables, and here's the fields that are in those tables. Go make it. The design's another whole complex process that we're not going to get into here. Once we have the fields defined, then we define records, and each patient in this case has their own record. But each student in my database has their own record. Right, so there's a Carrie Jo record that's got her information. There's a Microsoft Office record in the sections table that keeps track of when and where and what the name of the course is and all that kind of stuff. And here we can see examples of records. Some of these boxes, in this case, they're all full. Not always. Sometimes the boxes are empty. But in most cases, the boxes are full of data. And this is the data that we would then want to get out. If I had a club membership table, and here's my members, a list of names and phone numbers instead of patients, I might want to create a phone roster. I can ask the database to spit out a roster sorted alphabetically by name of everybody's name and phone number and then hand it out to everybody if I wanted to. Or create a web page from that and post it on the web so that all the club members can get at it from there. We're not limited to printing reports here. We can do all kinds of pretty fancy things. Again, beyond the scope of this course. One thing I do want to point out to you here, every record has one field has unique values. It's called the primary key field. The primary key, by definition, is unique for every record. Here at Midstate, your primary key is your student ID number. None of you share a student ID number. You might share first names. You might share last names. You might share both. But you don't share a student ID, and that's how we uniquely identify you. And that's why when you walk up at the front desk, they don't say, "Hey, Kate, how you doing?" They say, "What's your ID number, please?" Because as soon as they have your ID number, they know everything about you. They know what classes you're registered in. They know how to get to your transcripts. They can find your address, your phone number. They have everything right there in front of them. Your ID number is the starting point. Me personally, I hate that. That's a real personal touch, right? Hey, student 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, how you doing? Long time no see. No. Doesn't work that way. I think it's just as easy. I'm getting on my soapbox here. It's just as easy to say, "Hi, what's your name?" It's Ben. Look. I got 3 Ben Narings. Which one are you? I'm the one with this cell phone number. I'm the one with this student ID number. At that case, maybe I ask you your ID number because I don't know which Ben you are and I need to sort it out. But I think that's a little more personal. After a while, they can say, "Hey, Ben," as you're walking by, instead of, "Hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which they don't do anyways. Kidding. Okay, so we've got tables that are made up of fields. And once we got all the fields, we make lots and lots and lots, as many as we need, records. And each table has a primary key field that uniquely identifies each record in the table. We're going to see all this over and over and over again. This is kind of conceptual. When we start getting your hands into it, we'll see all these things again. The program that we're using, Microsoft Access, is a relational database management system. RDMS, Relational Database Management System. The relational means that the tables can be related to each other. Here's my patient table, and down here's my visits. Why don't I just put the people's names in there? Or worse yet, their phone numbers in there, in the visits. Why don't we just have one big visits table? And Forrest visited us on this day, and Forrest visited on that day, and we have all the different dates, and we can just see him and his phone number right there. Well, hopefully Forrest doesn't have lots of medical issues as a patient here, but if he visits us dozens of times and then he changes his cell phone plan, now I have to go find dozens of Forrest records and change all the cell phone numbers. And that's not terribly hard, but it's definitely prone to error. Names change. If somebody's name changes, I wouldn't want to have to go through there. It's called duplicate data, redundant data. I have your name stored in the database 12 times. Ever get 3 copies of the same Figgies catalog because you moved? Or you changed your name? Or one for you and one for your roommate and one for the other? It's because their database isn't Figgies. I'm just making it up. I'm sure their database is fine. But if the database isn't set up, you can have a lot of redundant data and nobody knows. And we can get inaccurate statistics. We can get duplicate catalogs sent. We want to avoid as much of that duplicate data as possible. So down here in the visits table, all we store about the patient is their ID number. Patient number 22504. And if you want to know who that is, who had their annual wellness check on 11/18, I just go backwards, 22504, and I see, oh, it's Lillian Agliar. And if I wanted to call her and do a follow-up, I have to blend these two tables together. Those are related tables. That's why it's a relational database management system, because the tables are related. Again, the design and how to make those relationships happen beyond the scope of this course, you're told what to build and you build it, which has its own skill. So we try to keep the redundant data as minimal as possible. The only thing we copy down here is, notice it's the primary key. Even the visits have a primary key, the visit ID number. Most tables have some kind of an ID number that's used as the primary key to uniquely identify that visit. Otherwise, it gets kind of complicated. Lillian, how many visits could she have? 10. There could be lots of different dates. Maybe she visited us 3 times on one date for 3 different reasons. Which visit are we talking about? Visit number 1613. Oh, okay. Relational database management systems also include the ability, make sure I didn't skip anything important down here, nope. Also include the ability to generate forms and reports to help look at this data in a better way. Imagine if you had thousands of patients who, of course, each have dozens of visits, so that's tens of thousands of visits, and you have to scroll through this to find stuff. Very painful. And then you have to transfer all that data into a report and keep account of how many people showed up in March and how many people showed up for hernia operations and how many what. Very difficult to type all that up. So most database management systems, including Access, include the ability to create forms, which makes looking at data easier and modifying data easier. And they include the ability to generate reports, which is very, very powerful, so that we can say, give me a list of all the visits in November of 2014, categorize them by the type of illness, and then sort them by date. You can ask all kinds of questions like that. And the one thing we haven't talked about is the ability for a relation, and this is the most important component of a relational database management system. Tutorial 3 for us. Queries. If I put all this data in, I want to be able to get it out. Give me a list of all the people who were scheduled for hernia operation. I don't know where hernia is coming from, but anyway, so hernia operations in December of 2015 because our doctor who fixes them has his own hernia now and we have to reschedule. It'd be nice not to have to filter through 25,000 records trying to find all those patients. You can just ask a question. You can create a query that gives us the answer. Very, very powerful. I will give you examples, except most of my examples here are live and it might be embarrassing, so I don't want to do that. But I can ask, I have a truancy report that gives me a list of students who I haven't seen in over a week, so that I can go call the counselor and say, hey, this person's been has been missing in action for a week and a half. You might want to see if we can track them down and see what's going on. I can find out the last time anybody attended a class. It's the end of the semester. Mid-State wants to know, when was the last time this person who failed the class was there? Because if it was way back in August or September, they ask you for the financial aid back now. And they always ask me, who are they? I often do is ask my program to write questions. This that you're looking at on the screen is not Microsoft Access. Microsoft Access is behind the scenes of this. It's behind the screen, if you will. It stores all the data. It answers the question. But this is actually a website that I and my students developed to answer these questions for me and to help me manage that data. It's called a front-end program. It's a program that sits on top of a database. Using programming languages and websites, I can ask even more complicated questions than I can using Access directly. Plus, I don't have to have Microsoft Access installed on my computer. It's on the web. I can get to it from anywhere, including my phone if I really need to. Access does not run on your phone. So there's more to all this, but this is a solid foundation. If you have a good understanding of it, you can do some pretty powerful things and let your future employers know some of the things they might want to do with their databases if they don't already have one. What I really hope you get out of this is an understanding of the way databases are built. And then if you can do queries when you leave here, that's a skill that many people don't have. How do we get the answer out of this thousands of records of databases, or of records in my database? How do I get the answer out? How do I develop the query that gives me the answer that I want? That, I think, is the most valuable skill you'll get out of this. That's at Unit 3. You'll learn to create some simple reports and forms in Unit 4, but they're so simple that they're hardly worthwhile. The intermediate class takes you much deeper. Okay, so let's build something here. Where's my mouse? There it is. I'm going to kind of get away from the book here if you're trying to follow along. I am following the book, but I have my own little cheat sheets here, so I don't even know what page I'm on half the time. If you really want to know, ask me. But I'm going to launch Microsoft Access, just like most of you already have. Please. And like all Microsoft Office products, when you first launch them, you get this launch pad here and say, well, what do you want to do? You want to launch an existing database that's out there someplace, and notice I've messed around with a few of them, or would you like to create a web app, or what is it that you want to do? In our case, if you're starting from scratch, it's a blank database. So go ahead and click on that. And then it wants to know, what do you want to call this? And the name we're supposed to call it is Chatham, C-H-A-T-H-A-M. You do not need to attach the .accdb access database, just like Microsoft Word, just like Excel. If you don't tell it what extension to put on there, it's Microsoft Access. It puts its own extension on there for you automatically. We also need to tell it where to go. So mine's going to my Documents folder. I'll never find it there. I would put yours on your H drive or your flash drive. I'm putting mine on my desktop because it's my laptop. I don't recommend your desktop because Citrix is your desktop and it lies to you and it's not really your desktop and you'll never find it again if you put it on your desktop. Put it on your H drive or put it on your flash drive. So once this has the right name, notice it added the accdb for me. And once you've got the location correct, and that's a critical step because if you miss that, then you're calling me over saying, Volker, I can't find my database. I can probably help you track it down, but we can save some time if you put it on your H drive or your flash drive right away. Create. Once again, we get a ribbon, just like always, with all kinds of different tabs across the top. The good news is there aren't as many. as there are in some of those other programs, and we don't use all of them, so it's a little easier to navigate this program, I think. On the left-hand side of your screen is the navigation bar. Remember that Access is a database management or relational database management system. One file, this Chatham file, is going to store all of your tables. Even if we had 150 of them, we're going to have two. They would all be in this one file. It stores all of your queries in this same file. It stores all of your forms, all of your reports. Everything related to this database is stored in one file. So when you send me your assignments, or when you do your assignments, you'll be sending me one file, maybe two. Everything else will be inside. So we're already given an initial table, because a database without a table is pretty useless. And then we can create more tables, and later on we'll create forms and reports and queries, but they all get saved in the same place, and this navigation bar shows them all to you. It's the contents of this database. That's what you see there. Right now, one table. That's it. And there's not much to that table. Access is helping us out. Say, well, you got a new database. I'll bet you want to design this table, design it, create some fields for it. We do that first. I have to have the fields, the structure, before we can enter some data. They even give us an ID field. Since so many tables have an ID number, they give you one. However, it's not exactly what we want. So the first thing we're going to do is come back to ID here. And I believe, let's see, how am I supposed to do this? If you right-click it, down here at the bottom is the opportunity to rename the fields. The fields in Microsoft Access, this is called Data Sheet View. We get to see all the data on one big sheet. The field names are across the top. You want to order the field names in a pretty reasonable order. It's not terribly critical, but when you enter data, we don't enter last name, first name, city, street, zip code, middle initial. We don't enter data that way. If you put them in some logical order, it makes the data a little easier to enter. So here's the ID number. We're going to rename it, and let's call this the visit ID. Now, while I'm typing up there, it's kind of small. I think you can see it, though. Let me talk about naming standards. For those of you that are programmers in the room, if you wish for your field names to use camel case, you may. For the rest of you, what I normally do is capitalize the first letter of every word, and that's what the book recommends. It lies, though, because then it capitalizes both letters and ID, I guess because it's an abbreviation. In my programming classes, we wouldn't capitalize the D. But we capitalize the first letter of every word so that it's easy to see the words because we're not putting any spaces in here. Spaces cause problems when we put one of those front ends like my website. When we put a front end on a database and there's spaces in the field names, it causes trouble. Same thing with table names, form names, query names. When you're naming stuff here, leave the spaces out. We will tell Access a little later to display spaces when you're communicating with, I call this the humans. The users, put some spaces in there because they like them, but behind the scenes there shouldn't be any spaces in your names. The book follows us, so just follow along with their naming. Just don't put any spaces in your field names. Press enter to lock in that new name. I'm going back to visit ID again, and the other thing we need to do is change its type. Every field, you must designate what type of data does it store. Up here are the list of data types. It's a relatively small list. Auto number is one of my favorites, but not one the book uses a whole lot. The problem with auto numbers is it's not very transportable, and many of you are going to be doing assignments here and then want to take them home, and they have some sample records, so you don't have to type them all, and if you auto number, that can mess things up. So they're not a big fan of it, but I am. And here's the other options. Short text. I believe, I'll have to look in the notes, but it really doesn't matter, that short text can handle anything up to about 32,000 characters. Maybe it's a little more. But 32,000, that's a couple of paragraphs in one box? Probably not. Short text is what you use for anything that's text-based. Names, first names, last names, cities, zip codes. Wait a minute. Zip codes are numbers. No, they're not. You don't do math with them, they're not numbers. They just have digits in them. What happens when you put a dash in your zip code? Do you want to subtract? No. So zip codes, phone numbers, even student ID numbers. If I take Julia's student ID number and subtract Valerie's, does that tell me how many days apart they registered, or does it tell me anything? Nothing. They should be stored as text. Plus, if you store them as text, the leading zeros stay in there, because some of you have ID numbers start with zeros. If you try that in Excel, it strips the zeros off. Now you've only got a 5-digit ID number, and that's not so cool. So if you don't do math with it, something to keep in the back of your head. If you don't do math with it, it's probably text. If you need really long text, like the description of the book's jacket cover or something like that, you might switch to long text. It handles up to 2 billion characters in one cell, one box. Rarely use it. You need numbers, use number. Once you pick some of these, you can get a little more specific. But if you need a number, like somebody's age, how many children they have, their GPA, those are numbers. You need to store a date, that should be pretty obvious, use date time. You need to store money, use currency. If you're storing money, use currency because it stores more accurately than a number. If you just need a yes, no, full-time, part-time, using financial aid, all those are yes, no type questions. You use the yes, no box, takes up very little room in the database. And finally, there's a hyperlink, but we're not going to be using that in class. If you wanted to store somebody's email, you could use that if you wanted to, and it turns it into a hyperlink so you can click on it and immediately send them an email. Not from a database, I won't. I don't use that one very often. So this one, the visit ID, we're supposed to change it to a short text field. And you can use the ribbon to do this. In Chapter 2, we're going to use a different way to build tables. In this unit, we're just kind of doing an overview, learning some concepts, tables and fields. Fields have types. This field is also supposed to be our primary key. And it is. It says right there, it's unique. In Access, that's how you designate the primary key, by designating it as unique here. I take that back. I thought there was another way. There is, it's just not on the ribbon, but unique will work here. Because it's the ID field, Microsoft Access automatically checked that unique box for you. There's only one, and it's usually the first field. And I think in just about every database they have you do, it's the ID field. Okay, now we're done with that one. But now we need some more information, some more fields. So I'm going to come over here where it says click to add. I'm sorry, I'm going to do it a different way. This is another one of those programs that got 8 different ways to do the same thing. Okay. The next field I want, I already know that it's another short text field. These buttons allow you to add a field of the given type. Okay. Yes, no's, date times, currency, number, short text, those are the most common. There's a few more spares here, a few. But these are the most common, so let's pick short text. And notice when you click on this, that means add a field. That's a pretty slick way if you know what you're adding, and the book tells you, so that works. And we're supposed to call this one patient ID. Remember to capitalize with no spaces. It's already short text, so we don't have to do anything extra. Now I want to add a date time field, so click on date time up here on the ribbon. Get another field. This one's supposed to be called visit date, capital D. I'm going too fast, ask me to slow down. I'm talking nice and slow, right? Tyler's going to speed it up. And now I'm going to press enter and watch what happens. Automatically moves over to the next field. Because I just created a field, it automatically moves over to the next one. And this one that I'm going to add is another short text field. So I could grab my mouse and click on short text because it's already selected. Notice you can, on the click to add, there's all the same types. A few extras. Okay. I could touch it with my mouse, or I can just press S for short text. Or actually, maybe in this case it's T. Nope, that didn't work. Let's try S. That's not right either. Let's try that one more time. I'm going to drop this list down if it'll let me. It won't. Let's delete that. Here's field 1 after visit date. Here's the delete the field button. Don't do this very often. Whoa. Did yours do that? I hope not. That closed it. That's ugly. Here's Chatham, and I didn't save anything, so now I got to catch up with you. Did yours do that? Tell me no. Oh, good. You're smarter than I am. I'm glad you didn't. So here's my table. I want a design view. I got a few of them, but how do I get back to the view I was in before? Uh-oh. Well, tell you what. I'm going to delete this whole table, which is probably just as risky. You just stay put. I'm going to see if I can catch up with you here. Not going to let me do it. Oh, that wasn't part of the plan. Why can't I delete that table? Let's create a new table for me. You don't have to follow. Okay, I'm just going to do this real quick. We right-click this and said rename it and called it Visit ID. And in the Home tab, we said, was it the Home tab or was it the Fields tab? There we go. We said that this one is supposed to be short text. Then I hit short text again and hit a patient ID. And then I hit date and did visit date. Notice how relatively quickly this goes when Volker's not talking so much. And unfortunately, you'll have to read and keep up. And type. So it still slows you down a little bit, but if you know what fields you want, you can just start typing them and they come pretty quick. And then the next one I was supposed to click to add. And if you just type an S, it puts the short date. It's not working either. It's supposed to do that. I'm going to click on short date. That way I'm safe. What are we supposed to call this? Reason. Press enter. Takes you to the next list. Supposed to do a yes, no. Field name, walk in. And it's a yes, no field. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. Most of them short text, one date, one yes, no. You're doing your homework assignments, you just follow along with what they tell you to build. At this point, we need to save this. Access is a little weird when it comes to saving. Actually, it's a little friendlier than most of the other programs. In Excel or Word, if you forget to save, it never happens. Okay, there's a temporary file that's created for you, but it never happens. In Microsoft Access, you'll see soon, a lot of stuff saves automatically. But not table structure. We just built our table structure. So now we hit the save button. And what we are saving here is the table. The database is always saved. What you save is the stuff that's inside. Give the table a name, and we're supposed to call this what? Forgot to write that down. Who's got their book open? This must be the visits table. So let's call it visits. Again, just follow the book. If the book says visit instead of visits, I like plural because what's inside here? Lots and lots of visits. Let's see if I can delete that one. Okay, there's my visits table. And now what you're in is datasheet view. Before we were in kind of build mode. Now we're done. We've saved it. Well, what if you screwed this up and these are the wrong types? We'll learn how to fix it next unit. For right now, try to be careful. Okay, and avoid that delete button. That's weird. It locked me out. Okay, now how do we get data in? In datasheet view, you simply type it. And we're not going to type all the ones in the book, so those of you who are typing crazy, there's like 10 of them. We don't need them all. We just type. So for the visit ID, it's white right now. I can just type 1550. Maybe I'll have to click. There we go. 1550 is my visit ID. In Excel, you press tab to move from column to column. You can do that here, or you can simply press enter, and it always moves you across because we're now entering the data for one record. 22549. 22549. Unfortunately, there's no good way for me to zoom in on this. Be right with you. Let me finish this and I'll come help a bunch of you. Then it wants the visit date. How do we enter dates? Pretty much the same way you did in Excel. About any way you can dream up. The date that we want is December 1st of 15. You could type the word December, abbreviate it DEC. You could type 2015-12-1. Just about any way you can dream it up. Easiest way for most people is to type 12/1. And if it's the current year, watch what happens when I press enter, automatically adds the year to it. Unfortunately, your book is looking ahead and all their dates are 15s and 16s, so that the book is still current next year. To go back, you can shift tab and just replace it. If you type a 2-digit year, that ought to be enough. If it's not, go back and fix it. The reason for this person was influenza. And yes, they were a walk-in. Now here's the tricky part. Now I'm going to pause and come help the rest of you. It's a checkbox. You can obviously grab because that's a yes/no field. So instead of you typing yes, typing no, they give you a checkbox. Could grab the mouse and click on it, but that's painful because I just got done typing. Just press the space bar and it will toggle it. That works on websites too and every place else. Finally, press enter and it starts a new record. And here's where Access is helping you. That record has now been saved. You don't have to hit the save button every time you enter a new record. As soon as you leave the record, it saves it. Done. No saving required. If I go back and change it because I misspelled influenza, as soon as I leave the record, it saves it automatically. No saves required. The only thing you have to save is structure and forms and stuff. All right, a couple people missed how to save it. You can rename it. Okay. But before you can rename it, it can't be opened. So you followed along and you entered some data. That was good. But in order to rename this, you can't do it while it's open. But don't close this. That closes the entire Access program. It's like in Excel. Remember there were multiple sheets and you could switch between sheets, but you didn't close them. Here you can close objects. This X closes the thing that we're working on in this window without shutting down Access. Go ahead and close it. That closes the table, but it's still here in your navigation bar. Now you can right-click it and rename it to whatever you want. For those of you who named it properly, just leave it alone, but see that you can rename it because it's very likely going to happen to you when you do your homework assignment. You get heavy fingers, hit enter, close it first, that's the key. Without closing Access, close the table and then rename it and you're all set. Then when you're ready to mess with it again, just like everything else in Microsoft Office, you double click it and it opens it up right where you left off. Julia?
What did you say that as again?
Visits. Good news is it's easier to read in the book. Okay, another thing to recognize here, notice the little star. And there's an empty record down here. No, that's not an empty record. They started this about 10 years ago, made me crazy, still does. The star means new. This is where you put new records, which is really convenient because it's always at the bottom. What if I have 30,000 records? The new one, I got to scroll all the way down to the bottom. Well, not exactly. There's a button up here someplace you can click to add a new one. But let's add another record just to get some practice. So click in that first box right next to the star. And this one starts out with a 1527. Again, you can press enter. and then a 22522. The date of 11/9/15. The reason is allergies, that's not it yet, dash seasonal. Or, pardon me, environmental. Can't type today. Doesn't fit in the box. Unlike Excel, we don't get pound signs, it just gets chopped off. We'll fix that in a minute. And no, this was not a walk-in. Or yes, it was. I'm reading my notes wrong. So press tab or spacebar, excuse me, spacebar or click it with your mouse, either way. And as soon as you press enter, you're in the last field. Notice it doesn't go over here. This is click to add a new field in case you needed one. It's pretty rare. I wouldn't use this to do it. Just press enter and now it starts another new record. Type a 111 in there. Notice the little pencil, the star went away and now it's a pencil. Pencil means you've edited this record, but you haven't saved it yet. Notice there's no pencil on 1527. It's because it's been saved. As soon as we left it, it's saved. If you start something like this and you change your mind, press escape. It empties that field. Press escape again, it cancels the new record. If I went up here, just watch, you don't have to follow, and put in a bunch of junk. If I press escape, it takes out the junk, and if I changed anything else and pressed escape a second time, it cancels all my changes to that record. So if it says change record 1550 and you accidentally change this one, if you haven't left yet, you can press escape about 20 times and it'll put it back. Usually all it takes is 2, but just to be sure, I hit it 20 times and then everything's gone. Put it back the way it was. There is some level of undo here, but undo doesn't do the same way. It doesn't work the same way. Don't follow. If I come in here, press 3, and then leave, that 3 has been saved. Can I undo? Yes, but I can't tell you for how long. I'm surprised that it let me do that because I already saved the record, but it let me do it. If you start something, press escape lots of times, you can undo it. Okay. Let's add one. Actually, do we have to save? No. All our records have been saved. We didn't change anything else, so we don't really need to save. But I can't read my allergies environmental. All right, let's use your Excel skills. How do I stretch the column? You used to go to the column header, right? Oh, look, ha! Sizing arrows. Size to fit. Double click. Ta-da. You can do them all. Watch and then follow. I'm going to click this box in the upper left and then pick any one of these edges and double click, and they all resize to fit except for one thing. If I had 300 records here that aren't all on the screen, if there's any off the screen that are bigger than the column right now, it only resizes to fit what's on the screen. That's dumb. I keep waiting for them to fix that, and they haven't done it. Why don't you just resize for everybody? For all the records, even if there's 30,000, resize them. What you have to be careful of in a couple of places, I can imagine they're going to do this to you on the test, is they're going to ask you to resize, and the records that are the longest are off the screen. So what you have to do is scroll, see if there's anything bigger. If there is, resize again. Scroll, anything bigger, resize again, until you find the biggest one. It's kind of annoying. Ben? Are you editing? Try pressing, you got a little pencil over here? Escape. Get rid of the pencil. You cannot resize columns while you're editing columns. Got it? Good. So in Ben's case, he wouldn't let him resize. Here's Ben, right? In Ben's case, it wouldn't let him resize because he's in the middle of editing data. He had the pencil going on over here. To get rid of it, I just had him press the escape key a couple dozen times and then try resizing, and that worked. All right, let's add one more. We're not going to get too crazy here. 1548. with a patient ID of 22519. Came in on 11/30/15. Complaining of hypertension. And no, it was not a walk-in. So we just go past it. If you press tab, it starts a new row. And that record that we just added already saved. All done. No saving required. You could close access right now and it would shut down and not ask a single question. We're supposed to type what? No, that takes too long. We got better things to do. One thing I do want to show you that they don't do a very good job of. Let's add another record. Visit ID 1548. Anybody see a problem? There's what? 2. It's a primary key. Rules are primary keys must be unique. What's access going to do? Just put some junk in here up for the date. Might as well put something decent in there. 1 and some junk. And as soon as I leave, the changes requested were not successful because they would create duplicate values in the primary key. Can't do it. It's illegal in access. Primary key values must be unique. It won't let you do it. So you click on OK, and now you look at it and go, oh, that's supposed to be 1546 or something. Or you press the escape key a few dozen times until the pencil goes away and the whole thing went away because you already entered that one. So you cannot accidentally enter duplicate keys. Let's close the table. Wait a minute, Volker, you said we don't have to save. Well, read that carefully. Do you want to save the changes of the layout? That's the column widths. We resize the columns to fit. That's a layout. The question is, do you want to save the column widths? Well, sure, that way I don't have to resave them later. But it allows you to mess things up and turn them around, shrink them, expand them, and then when you leave, go, nah, put them back to what they were before. Click on yes to save those. Now the table's saved. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll do a little bit more, but go ahead and leave this open.